Welcome! Today you will see how a pattern is made from scratch. In this video I am making a notepad sleeve for an A4 notepad. It also fits a 13-inch laptop if that's what you want to use it for. Please be aware that this is not a step-by-step tutorial. If you want one, let me know in the comments below and I might do one for you. First, as you can see, we measure the item that we plan to hold in the sleeve and we leave some space on both sides. I usually leave 1 to 1.5 inches to make sure the item fits perfectly. The next step would be for you to cut around your markings. Make sure you keep your fingers away and then fold the piece in half. I use clips to hold it together, as you can see here, and then check or do a test with your item to see how it fits in. If it needs adjustments, make them as you see fit. In my case, the notepad fits perfectly. And now, once the body is ready, we make the flap. You can see here that I'm using a different piece to make the flap, but as you will see later in the video, I decided to cut out the leather piece as if it would be one pattern piece. My final pattern is now just one piece. You'll see that once you start creating your own patterns, you will realize as you go along that certain things can be done better, and then you go back to the drawing board, you improve your pattern, and you repeat as many times until you have the final pattern that you're happy with. For the flap, we made it the same width as the main body, and then I decided to cut the corners a small bit slanted to give the flap a more uncommon shape. At this stage, I've seen that it is common for other YouTubers to ask you, the viewer, to like and share the video, but I'm gonna do that a small bit later. Let's focus on the pattern first. Once the flap is cut out, I'm putting the two pieces together. I'm using the strap to see how it would fit, and it is exactly at this stage that I realized that this could be one piece, not two. In this next step, I am measuring the closing piece, meaning the flap, and you'll see later the mechanism that I came up with. Basically, you measure the width and length of your piece, of the strap, and then you transfer them onto the pattern. And you have to make sure that everything matches up together, because you will be punching the holes directly onto the pattern, and you want everything to be centered, and you want the flap to be long enough to go through the loop. You also want for the loop to not be too wide, but at the same time to be wide enough for the strap to go through, and to be also tight enough for the strap to not go out on its own. What you see here in my hand is the prototype of the closing mechanism I did beforehand. If you see me measuring the same length or the same spot twice or 3 times, it's because it's very important to measure out the exact center of the piece for you to be able to measure out all the other measurements to ensure that everything is symmetrical. Even though the first pattern is usually the prototype pattern, and you use that to make your first prototype, and after that you improve the pattern for you to have the final pattern. Sometimes, as you gain more experience, the first prototype pattern fits perfectly, so you want to do your best for the measurements to be as accurate as possible so you don't have to do adjustments. If you have this type of die cuts, you will make your life easier. They're not too expensive, you can get them on Amazon or wherever you buy your stuff online. You can still achieve the same results with a hole punch. You punch 2 holes on the extremities and then you cut the piece in between. Same result, but with a small bit more effort. Here you see me placing the strap on the pattern and using the prototype closing mechanism to make sure that the strap is placed at the perfect position to fit snug, to close the sleeve when one notepad is inside, and also to be able to slide the flap in case more items are being put inside. The next step is to place the pattern onto the leather piece. I cut a rough size of the leather and then I use these weights to hold the pattern down. The weights you see, they are double height door stoppers. They do the job, and usually when I have a pattern like this and I have to cut straight lines and the pattern is thin mounting board or a thinner cardboard, I usually mark just the corners of the pattern and then I use a metal ruler to cut out the straight lines. And what I'm doing here in this shot is I'm marking 1 centimeter from the flap to overlap it with the main body pattern and then mark it as if this would be just one piece. Again, this is what my final pattern looks like, it's just one piece. This is the step I just mentioned where I use the ruler to basically mark the corners from corner to corner, and then I cut them out. I use a longer ruler where required, and that's pretty much it. Just make sure you push it down perfectly and make sure your blade is sharp enough. If you want, you can cut out the strap by hand. That's what I was doing initially many years when I started, but for this one I'm using die cuts that I usually use for key rings. And a secret I can tell you is use whatever you have laying around when you're designing new products, unless you need something very specific, and make use of this secret and your creativity will have no limits. With the main piece cut out, I'm using the template to mark the folding line. Then I test if the notepad fits in properly and then move on to the next step. However, I just realized here that when the item is inside of the sleeve, it's difficult to pull it back out, as you can see here. So I decided to cut out an indentation to allow easier access for the thumb. Once I marked the rough shape I want, I fold the pattern in half. So I cut once, and when I unfold it, I have a very symmetrical cutout. You get the point. Next, I am measuring the position of the holes for the rivets. Small details like this, again, I tend to measure twice to make sure they are at the exact location where I need them to be. The next step is to punch the holes in the leather piece and test out the closing mechanism. Another realization I had here is that I need a cutout for the triangular metal piece to fit in better. And just in case, if you're following along, don't forget to transfer this cutout onto the template too. If you know me or if you have watched any of my previous videos, you know that I stitch my products by hand. But for this one, somehow it felt better to use rivets on. Once you apply the rivets onto your main closing mechanism, do the same for the strap and for the loop, and your closing mechanism is done. This sliding mechanism allows for the sleeve to be closed properly even when bulkier items are placed inside with no hassle. I'm sure I did not invent this mechanism, however I haven't seen it anywhere else, and again those triangular metal pieces, I have them laying around, so I said I'll make good use of it. In the next step, we are applying the glue on both sides. We are attaching everything together. We set the wing divider to the desired width. I used 4 millimeters. Then we mark the stitching line and punch the holes. And for an even more elegant look, I use a French punch, the one that cuts diagonally. You'll see it now in a bit. Another secret I can share with you is when you use the French punch, punch the first hole a round hole, so that when you do the stitching at the end, you don't have a weird diagonal cut. You have a nice perfect round cut. I also mark a line along the edge, along all edges, just for added fanciness, if that's even a word. And next, I'm stitching the edges using the saddle stitch method, using 2 needles. If you want to learn this one, let me know. However, there are plenty of videos on YouTube to teach this one. Once done, I use a edge beveler to bevel the edges. Then I apply tokonole, that's this white paste that makes the edges look super shiny. And then I burnish them using a slicker, I think that's how you call it. It's a wooden tool that makes the leather look like glass. Again, don't forget the added fanciness. Those lines are not necessary, but I like them. And that's it. Here's the final product. If you learned something or if you enjoyed the video, push that like button and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. And if you didn't like the video, push that thumbs down icon and leave me a comment below what I can do better next time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have a great rest of the day.